Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss America's intervention in the Northern Ireland Protocol Brexit row that seems to have caused Boris Johnson to change course on his Article 16 nonsense and forced his unelected Brexit Minister David Frost to hastily rewrite a speech that he gave yesterday. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So we had been anticipating that Boris Johnson was likely, not certain, but likely to make an ill-judged move in announcing his intention to unilaterally suspend parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol that he negotiated, signed, and won a general election on the back of. Frost updated the House of Lords yesterday, and the rhetoric seemed to have been dialed down a lot. And I saw people wondering, is this because of they're now taking the threats from the EU seriously, especially as, you know, the market would flip its lid. You know, the prospect of the trade and cooperation agreement being annulled at the end of next year. In part of his speech, Frost mentioned that he'd be happy to explain his position to any interested parties, even those, he said, who were not signatories of the treaties. I don't think he meant me. I rather thought he meant at the time the United States. That's obviously who he was referring to. And before I go through how maddeningly stupid all this is, let me explain what the US did. So, on Tuesday, as it happens, during our sleepy time, I think that's why I missed it, the Foreign Affairs Committee said this, amongst other things said this. In threatening to invoke Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol, the United Kingdom threatens to not only destabilise trade relations, but also that hard-earned peace. Now, I need to explain a few things here. Firstly, both the White House and Capitol Hill, during the administrations of both Donald Trump and Joe Biden, have been warning that they will not support any action that puts the Good Friday Agreement at risk. This is nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans. This is both. And every time the subject of not sticking to our side of the bargain came up over the last year, some branch of the US government would repeat the line. But look at the wording in this statement. They are specifically saying that threatening to invoke Article 16 is a threat to peace in Northern Ireland. Because there were obviously too many dimwits over here thinking, yeah, but we're not threatening the Good Friday Agreement. Don't worry about it. You know, thinking in their mind that the threat to the Good Friday Agreement was the hard border in Ireland only. And it's like, you know, but we're not going to build it there. If the EU want to, but then that's their lookout. The United States is stating super clearly, in very explicit language here, that, yeah, by doing this, you are threatening peace. Note what they're saying. And this language is way beyond anything they've said before. Note what they're saying. They're not just saying that suspending bits of the protocol threatens peace. That in itself would be much clearer language in the public sphere than's ever existed before. But they're not just saying that. They're not even just saying that invoking Article 16 threatens peace. They are saying that threatening to invoke Article 16 threatens peace. This is a clear message to the UK government, but I think people outside the UK government to stop it right now. And it appears that they did. Note the veiled threat of trade sanctions in there. Because this is just, remember, the public statement. Behind the scenes, it is almost certain that Boris Johnson will have had not only a private conversation this week, but in the past as well, where the language used was much more robust, much clearer. You know, the public statements are written often in diplomatic language, you know. And you think, could it be that it wasn't just the EU making clear what economic sanctions would be forthcoming, but the United States as well? And if so, what was the real threat? Because even here, they're stating very, very clearly that they will not support the UK government even threatening to invoke Article 16 anymore. Stop your nonsense now. But what's the threat there? What's the action they're threatening to take? That's not clear. That's not explicit. I mean, you would imagine that the threat of trade sanctions from countries representing 70% of our total trade in one go would make any Prime Minister balk. But the amount of trade with the EU alone should have done that. You know, was it that he can't survive political isolation from both the EU and the US? Johnson seems to make a virtue of attacking the EU, but he's supposed to be wanting closer relations with the United States. Sure, they are technically on hold because he aligned himself very, very strongly with Donald Trump and continues to do so. You know, the plan is clearly to plod along with Biden as best he can and hope that Trump is re-elected in a few years. But even under Trump, this nonsense won't fly. Republicans as well as Democrats have been clear they will not help the UK out with a trade deal at the cost of peace in Ireland. The reasoning is also obvious. The Irish lobby in America is huge and massively influential. I could also say that on this occasion it is the UK that is in the wrong over this, and people may argue that. That's completely irrelevant. America has never been about doing what's right, but about what's in their political interests. Hence, about half their politicians will starve their own people and deny them healthcare, but they will put themselves out for people living on the Emerald Isle thousands of miles away. But I'll tell you what I find most incredible here. It's that Johnson didn't have this priced in. That's what gets me. It's like he didn't expect the United States to take this position. Almost like he was woken up. Prime Minister, America said what? As if it was some complete surprise. All out the blue. And I know the reason. I'm still flabbergasted, genuinely flabbergasted, but I know the reason. The reason is that Johnson has surrounded himself with sycophants, yes men. It's not my observation either. It's not me going, well, this must be the case because look at what he keeps doing. I know this. This is what Conservative MPs tell us. Every time he blunders, like he has in the last week, we get the same old stories from Conservative MPs. Well, it's because he surrounds himself with these idiots that won't say no to him. You know, this miscalculation should not have been possible. Our Foreign Office has been highly skilled at predicting how foreign governments will react to certain policies. If Johnson did not have this dysfunctional network of toadies surrounding him, he'd have been told long ago about the ramifications of his plans to suspend the protocol. It would not have needed an 11th hour change. You know, it would then have been up to him to either accept the political and economic cost or change his plans much sooner on without it looking like a sudden about turn. It is simply inconceivable that nobody in or around government expected this reaction. This means that someone knew and wasn't saying, because there's this environment around Downing Street that does not take kindly to people telling the Prime Minister things he doesn't want to hear. So his advisors allow him to blunder into hornet's nest rather than tell him that his latest brain fart is going to fall on its arse. Now, I don't know what this means exactly for this Article 16 nonsense. You may imagine, well, that's that gone then. They'll just kick it into the long grass. And maybe they will. You know, if it, as seems likely, Johnson dare not trigger Article 16 with the United States so firmly against it, yeah, we can assume that it's now going to be a case of just rhetoric from Johnson but no action. They'll keep saying that they're not happy with the protocol and they'll keep saying that the conditions have been met to trigger Article 16, but they will also add, as they did yesterday, but we don't really want to do that. We'd like to find a positive way forward. And they'll just keep doing that ad infinitum. You know, they won't actually do anything. And that's fine in some ways. I said recently that this would suit Boris Johnson because the consequences of acting were likely to be too risky anyway. But when I said that, I thought he at least knew what the consequences would be, including from the US, and had factored them in. It seems not. So the media aren't going to get their trade war, at least not yet. Johnson isn't going to get his unifying Brexit battle to distract from the corruption scandals. Although there is something else to consider. Throughout this episode, which now seems to have ended like Twin Peaks in a complete abstract confusion, I have wondered what pressure there is on Johnson to scrap the protocol. So how many Tory MPs insist that it's removed? We know there are some. How many? If Johnson cannot now comply with their wishes, how influential are they and what will they do? Will they go up to Johnson and say, if you're not going to give us what we want, we're going to drop you and get someone who will? All right. What will they do? Similarly with the corruption scandal. An escalation in conflict with the EU might have done Johnson some good politically, because it would reunite his MPs who right now are furious with him. There's even talk of replacing him. Not yet, not imminently, but if the polls continue to look bad, because that's what they care about really, it's not actually the scandal. What they care about is how it looks in public. And the polls may indeed continue to look bad if Labour can learn how to keep the pressure on at last. You know, is there a scenario where Johnson triggers Article 16 for no other reason that he's boxed himself into a corner and has no other way out? A little bit like when Donald Trump was coming to the end and people feared that he would do something silly like launch a strike against Iran or something. Remember that Johnson acts at all times to retain power. He's got no aims, no objectives, nothing he wants to achieve other than power itself. At some point, his ego would let him believe he'd written himself into the history books and he could resign and go off and do things. But not yet. Though I have to say, I think he's already written himself into the history books. I think future generations of school kids will absolutely know who Boris Johnson is. They're going to learn about Boris Johnson. I don't think in the terms he would like. So I don't necessarily think that Johnson has dropped his plans for the Northern Ireland Protocol and will go back to the drawing board. I mean, I don't know what he will be playing now, because I do not know what the internal pressures in the Conservative Party on this are. I just know that whatever his plan eventually is will not be unduly influenced by the consequences for the country or even his own party, but just his personal position. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.